Hey, welcome to the channel. We hope that you enjoy today's stories and check out the chapters on the video to see all the stories for today. But before we get into this video, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to get notified when we release a new video. So let's get into the video.
What is a disturbing fact you wish you never knew?
Story 1. That one can be aware they are in a coma and not able to get out of it. I get anxious just thinking about it. I was just released from a 5-week hospital stay and I had multiple different roommates during my stay. One of them was a woman who had a massive stroke. She would cry and wail and get frustrated and rip out her catheter. She would poop herself and then tear into the diaper, getting feces under her nails and all over herself and the bed. Her family would try asking her questions if she was in pain, hungry, or uncomfortable, but the more agitated she became, the less she could communicate anything. She couldn't talk and just moaned and cried. It was absolutely terrifying. Her family would say that they understood how frustrating it was for her, so I am guessing she was trapped in there. Her body couldn't cooperate, leaving her stuck in this useless husk. I really hope she wasn't aware in there. It sounds awful, but I hope her brain was damaged enough that she wasn't having coherent thoughts. Any way you look at it, a stroke is scary. Even though she kept me up all hours, I just felt really sorry for her. She was showing slight improvement though. She had an NG feeding tube taken out because she started being able to chew her food. I briefly had an NG tube during my stay and it was awful. I freaked out so badly they had to remove it because I felt like I was drowning and couldn't breathe. Total anxiety attack. And you can feel the tube in your throat, so it feels like a huge lump constantly choking you and causing you to gag. That stroke lady had her NG tube for weeks and I couldn't stand it for longer than about 45 minutes. It was torturous. I really hope she just wasn't capable of thinking that would make her aware and cognizant of being trapped in a completely broken and useless body that she could not control. Absolutely terrifying. Story 2. When I visited Sri Lanka, I was nearly perpetually asked by locals if I wanted to hire children for intercourse. One man tried to sell me his 5-year-old daughter. When I refused, he presumed I was gay and offered a small boy instead. Like WTF. Some places like these use it as a very lucrative scam. You accept it, then, when you are about to get to it, you get caught by the police with the child and taken to a dark room, get beat up a bit, and be threatened with life in prison or even a death sentence. And then the police officers tell you they can make it disappear if you pay them a certain amount. They then take your money and belongings and dump you somewhere in the middle of nowhere. You can't go to the police and report it, because you were committing intercourse with kids and they have evidence. So you just accept that someone turned your perversity on you and go home if you're lucky enough to manage to. ETA. I've seen some misunderstanding in the comments. The police in these cases are either corrupt and working with the traffickers, or are part of the trafficking ring and just dress up as police to intimidate the offender. They will take a cut of the money the offender pays to make the charges disappear, and won't report anything to the authorities because it would be detrimental to their scam. Also, how I know this. Have traveled to many places due to my job and have heard from locals and also mill or contractor friends who have been briefed about it when deployed. Plus, I was born and raised in Latin America, which means I know how these scams work by having seen and heard them happen. Story 3. Just how painful and torturous extreme radiation sickness is. Imagine feeling your muscles and organs dissolve inside your own body while skin just sloughs off while being fully conscious and feeling everything. Story 4. After any significant natural disaster or conflict starts up, human traffickers swarm the country looking for unattended children. Law enforcement will start watching ports of entry for the usual suspects. The usual suspects. Also, when the war started in Ukraine, many single men in the rest of Europe offered to take in female refugees, and waiting at the borders to ask them to come and live with them. It was so bad that refugee organizations asked through the media to please not appoint Ukrainian refugees to single men anymore. Story 5. Tarantula hawks are giant flying wasps that sting tarantulas, inducing paralysis. They then drag the paralyzed tarantula back to its nest and lay eggs in them. The eggs hatch and the larvae slowly devour the still alive, paralyzed tarantula from the inside.
If you're enjoying today's video about stories of our lives, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this and more. Now, let's get back to the video.
Story 6. Rabies is scary. Rabies. It's exceptionally common, but people just don't run into the animals that carry it often. Skunks especially, and bats. Let me paint you a picture. You go camping, and at midday, you decide to take a nap in a nice little hammock. While sleeping, a tiny brown bat, in the rage stages of infection, is fidgeting in broad daylight, uncomfortable and thirsty, due to the hydrophobia, and you snort, startling him. He goes into attack mode. Except you're asleep, and he's a little brown bat, so weighs around 6 grams. You don't even feel him land on your bare knee, and he starts to bite. His teeth are tiny. Hardly enough to even break the skin, but he does manage to give you the equivalent of a tiny scrape that goes completely unnoticed. Rabies does not travel in your blood. In fact, a blood test won't even tell you if you've got it. Antibody tests may be done, but are useless if you've ever been vaccinated. You wake up, none the wiser. If you notice anything at the bite site at all, you assume you just lightly scraped it on something. The bomb has been lit, and your nervous system is the wick. Rabies will multiply along your nervous system, doing virtually no damage, and being completely undetectable. You literally have no symptoms. It may be 4 days, or it may be a year, but the camping trip is most likely long forgotten. Then one day your back starts to ache. Or maybe you get a slight headache. At this point, you're already dead. There is no cure. The sole caveat to this is the Milwaukee Protocol, which leaves most patients dead anyway, and the survivors mentally disabled, and is seldom done. There's no treatment. It has a 100% kill rate. Absorb that. Not a single other viruses on the planet has a 100% kill rate. Only rabies. And once you're symptomatic, it's over. You're dead. So what does that look like? Your headache turns into a fever and a general feeling of being unwell. You're fidgety, uncomfortable, and scared. As the virus that has taken its time getting into your brain finds a vast network of nerve endings, it begins to rapidly reproduce, starting at the base of your brain, where your pons is located. This is part of the brain that controls communication between the rest of the brain and body, as well as sleep cycles. Next, you become anxious. You still think you have only a mild fever, but suddenly you find yourself becoming scared, even horrified, and it doesn't occur to you that you don't know why. This is because rabies is chewing up your amygdala. As your cerebellum becomes hot with the virus, you begin to lose muscle coordination and balance. You think maybe it's a good idea to go to the doctor now, but assuming a doctor is smart enough to even run the tests necessary in the few days you have left on the planet, odds are they'll only be able to tell your loved ones what you died off later. You're twitchy, shaking, and scared. You have the normal fear of not knowing what's going on, but with the virus really fucking the amygdala, this is amplified 100-fold. It's around this time the hydrophobia starts. You're horribly thirsty, you just want water. But you can't drink. Every time you do, your throat clamps shut and you vomit. This has become a legitimate, active fear of water. You're thirsty, but looking at a glass of water begins to make you gag and shy back in fear. The contradiction is hard for your hot brain to see at this point. By now, the doctors will have to put you on IVs to keep you hydrated, but even that's futile. You were dead the second you had a headache. You begin hearing things, or not hearing at all as your thalamus goes. You taste sounds, you see smells, and everything starts feeling like the most horrifying acid trip anyone has ever been on. With your hippocampus long under attack, you're having trouble remembering things, especially family. You're alone, hallucinating, thirsty, confused, and absolutely, undeniably terrified. Everything scares the literal crap out of you at this point. These strange people in lab coats. These strange people standing around your bed crying, who keep trying to get you to drink something, and crying. And it's only been about a week since that little headache that you've completely forgotten. Time means nothing to you anymore. Funny enough, you now know how the bat felt when he bit you. Eventually, you slip into the Adam rabies phase. Your brain has started the process of shutting down. Too much of it has been turned into a liquid virus. Your face droops. You drool. You're all but unaware of what's around you. A sudden noise or light might startle you, but for the most part, it's all you can do to just stare at the ground. You haven't really slept for about 72 hours. Then you die. Always, you die. And there's not one freaking thing anyone can do for you. Then there's the question of what to do with your corpse. I mean, sure, burying it is the right thing to do. But the freaking virus can survive in a corpse for years. You could kill every rabid animal on the planet today, and if 2 years from now, some moist, preserved, a rotten hunk of the used-to-be brain gets eaten by an animal, it starts all over. So, yeah, rabies scares the ish out of me. And it's freaking everywhere. Source: spent a lot of time working with rabies. Would still get my vaccinations if I could afford them. Story 7. I recently finished a book about World War II in China. So I want to say everything about the Grape of Nanjing. Women being forced intercourse in puddles of their own poop. Little girls being gang forced. Men being used for bayonet and target practice. Men being half decapitated, using a samurai sword to slice half their heads off. Women being forced intercourse with lengths of bamboo. Yeah, I'm done. The Japanese were executing so many Chinese prisoners that they actually had memos and meetings on where to bury the bodies. Later on in the war, the Japanese became cannibalistic and began eating prisoners, the Ichigo Offensive, where they took no supplies with them. They called human meat long pork. Indian soldiers were said to taste the best, followed by British. Story 8. In Dubai, I've witnessed the acts of human trafficking and illegal intercourse work. I tried my best to get it to light at the time I was there, but everyone there was kind of aware of it already and said that no one can or will do crap here. Even the daughter of the crowned king, a literal princess, had tried to escape the country but was caught and brought back. I left the country the next week, couldn't stand the thought of it. Spent a few months in the Emirates. Lots of nightmare fuel in that place. You don't even have to dig to find it. My favorite story was the teenage French boy that was kidnapped, gang-forced at knife point by Emiratis, including one with HIV, almost murdered and then left in the desert. He managed to make it home and told his mother, who told the police. Imagine their surprise when they were tipped off to flee the country immediately because he'd be charged with gay intercourse work. Screw that place.
Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed today's video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to see more videos about stories of our lives. Click on one of these videos to watch more and see you soon.